Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right. And this is Tom Navolis, your host, and I am so delighted to be here with you again as we delve into several items that I have been investigating for a long time. We'll see how we get through them, but the facts and truths are that the anti-federalists, without question, got it right. And this week is proving it out completely. So, a couple of the points that I am going to try and address today is what I've kind of hammered on a couple programs ago and a little bit maybe last week. I don't remember. It's been so long ago. But this whole thing on Calvinism 2.0 and what does that mean for good governance. So we're going to talk about that. I'm not going to get into the nonsense about this impeachment insanity because, once again, the Anti-Federalists called it. They saw it. They knew that this was going to happen, and I'm going to kind of reference, once again, out of the Anti-Federalist paper, something for you, and then kind of bring it all back in the governance idea of Sam Adams and what he definitely was all about. I mean, this program is Sam Adams Returns, right? So we need to bring things into perspective from Sam Adams' point of view. In relationship to that, the key point that I want to drive home is some of Sam Adams' background and how he was seen by others. And we're going to talk a little bit from the Congregational Quarterly and looking back at him. And the title of that was The Last Puritan, and talking about Sam Adams and so that's why I look at this whole thing on this Calvinism 2.0 and all of these people that are all part of that, and I sit here and go, wow, the 2.0 is not working like the 1.0 as it was implemented by the Puritan like Sam Adams. And what was happening during the preaching of that day and the time, and how did that work in governance, and how was that able to stand against the evils of the day? Yeah, all kind of interesting. So my bottom line on all of this always is that for the most part, the modern day evangelicals got their theology wrong, and we're in the pickle we're in. As I always say, and as the anti-federalists inferred over the federalists, is that the pulpits lost the bubble and we're not getting those truths that we should have or need to have for good governance. So let's take a little deeper dive here. And I do want to welcome everybody again from Soaring Eagle Radio and taking the opportunity to join me on this on Saturday evening. And once again, for everyone at Liberty Works Radio Network, remember we're on 3 time slots now. And every archive you can find at samueladamsreturns.net. samueladamsreturns.net. And that's where it'll take you to both the audio archive as well as you can see my smiling face there on YouTube and enjoy what that is. So let's kind of jump around a little bit here, but let's get to the Anti-Federalist. Now, we had this a long time ago, which I've talked to you about in the past. This Anti-Federalist called the Pennsylvania minority, which was actually the minority of the people that were at the Pennsylvania Constitutional Convention. When they came out of convention, they are going, there's things about this Constitution of 87 that really need to be looked at and will be problematic, without question. So this was written around December 18th, 1787. And we'll step back a little bit here in this one quote where the celebrated Montesquieu in the Spirit of Laws, Volume 1, page 12, says that in a democracy there can be no exercise of sovereignty. I'm going to stop there. I know I'm going to get lost. So every time you hear, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I apologize, folks, but this substantiates it, is that what we have is that we are not a democracy. Okay? We have democratic activity by virtue of the individual participating in our system as we should. And in the references, you'll see the link to Pastor Doug Wilson's artillery sermon of 2019, which I think was excellent and was very much like the sermons of the day for the election sermons, the artillery sermons back during our founding period of time. It's sad that he had to take so much time to explain what that means, but we are pretty stupid within the evangelical church anymore to understand how those sermons were preached and the meaningfulness of them. Anyway, Montesquieu says that there can be no exercise of sovereignty within a democracy, but by the suffrage of the people, which are their will. Now, the sovereign's will is the sovereign himself. The laws, therefore, which establish the right of suffrage are fundamental to this government. In fact, it is as important to regulate in a republic in what manner, by whom, and concerning what suffrages are to be given, as it is in a monarchy to know who is the prince and after what manner he ought to govern. The time, mode, and place of the election of representatives, senators, and President General of the United States ought not to be under the control of Congress, but fundamentally ascertained and established. Then he continues. The new Constitution, consistently with the plan of consolidation, contains no reservation of the rights and privileges of the state governments, which was made in the consideration of the year 1778 by Article the Second, viz., quote, and this was talking about the Articles of Confederation, that each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. End quote. So there, the legislative power vested in Congress by the foregoing recited sections is so unlimited in its nature, may be so comprehensive and boundless in its exercise, that this alone would be ample sufficient to annihilate the state governments and swallow them up in the grand vortex of general empire. I make mention of that and bring that to bear because, as you well know, is that the Anti-Federalists were absolutely the Federalists, states' rights, how a federation would come together, and what does that mean? One of the key elements here in this article in the Congressional Quarterly about Sam Adams was that he early nurtured the principles of civil and religious liberty. He possessed a quick understanding, a cool head, stern manners, a smooth address, and a Roman-like firmness, united with the sagacity and penetration that would have made a figure in a conclave. He was at the same time liberal in his opinion, uniformity, devout, sober, and indefatigable, calm in season of difficulties, tranquil and unruffled in the vortex of political altercation, too firm to be intimidated, too haughty for condensation. His mind was replete with resources that dissipated fear and extradited its great emergencies. Through a long life, he exhibited on all occasions an example of patriotism, religion, and virtue honorary to the human character. But with that, what it was is that he was considered, more than anybody else, the founder of what would be called democracy in America. And this was all written in 1869 when Sam Adams was already past history, and they were trying to figure out after the Civil War, what was still going on with this experiment of America. The character matters in the leadership, as I always say, and Sam Adams was absolutely concerned about states' rights. And he saw that this Constitution, even as it moved into the first 10 amendments, that Bill of Rights, because he didn't die until after the Bill of Rights was put in place, he was still concerned that we would end up with a consolidated government. So one of the things that I'll talk about in the second segment in particular is where we saw something happen this past Tuesday that Sam Adams was always concerned about, is that all government is local. We attended a meeting this past Tuesday, which we'll talk about in the next segment, but I want to give you a little preview, where we actually saw one bureaucratic body take and bully, yes, that's right, they bullied in a public meeting an elected body. Now, we see that happening at the local level, but more so, we're seeing it happen at the national level. So, okay, I am going to talk briefly. What do I have, Kath? 2 minutes? Yeah, 3.5 minutes. So briefly, as you go through and you really pay attention to those that are analyzing this impeachment insanity, what it is that what I've called the shadow government, especially out of that Foreign Service environment, the State Department, has always run its own idea of what foreign policy should be. So, as it is well stated by a number of the pundits out there, is what we see going on is a bunch of brats, spoiled children, swelled heads that are from the State Department and these other bureaucratic agencies that have always bullied the president and determined their own course of action. So if you read John Stoddard's books, it's John Stormer's books, None Dare Call It Treason, and then None Dare Call It Treason 25 years later, you will see that it is the State Department as the reason that we have communist China. You will see that we have the State Department why we have the United Nations. You will see that we have the State Department why we have so much communism in all different places. You will see that it is the State Department why we ended up with Cuba, why we ended up with Venezuela in the way it is, why we ended up with 99% of the problems over the last 100 years that we face in modern America is because of the State Department and the collusion between the State Department and the other bureaucratic agencies that look outward. So now we have a bunch of brats that cannot stomach the fact that Sam Adams, no, Donald Trump is acting of, by, and for we the people as a president should be elected to, and is not kowtowing to career bureaucrats and the enemies within. Guess what? I suspect that somewhere along the way that Donald Trump read None Dare Call It Treason. Somewhere along the way he read Skousen and The Naked Communist and The Naked Capitalist. Somewhere along the way, all of those other young people that are in there that are working with him also read some of these historical books that put it into perspective that the shadow government has been there since the early 1900s. You can even take it back to the time of the Civil War. Yeah, that far back. When you look at not conspiracies, but truths. Sam Adams got it right. He predicted it. Those anti-federalists, they all predicted it when you and really read and pay attention to what they have. So we'll come back in the next segment. We'll talk about some of this local bullying and how bureaucrats try to win over the elected. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to the second segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those Anti-Federalists, they got it right. This is Tom Navolis, your host, and I am delighted to be here at Liberty Works Radio Network, where Liberty does work for you, and every other program during the week has something there that each and every one of us will benefit from. So I ask you to go hit that donate button and pay attention to what's going on. Sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get the updates as to what's happening, especially in the live programming. And I think that it's just really something that needs to continue to be supported by you, the listeners, as we continue in this fight for liberty in our constitutional republic. Now, also, want to say you can find all of the programs, all of the archives at samueladamsreturns.net. Hey, pick up the books. I'm not seeing a whole lot of book sales, so I guess it really doesn't matter, on a lot of that stuff to folks. But I, challenge you to check it out. There's some really, really, really good, solid information that took me a couple of years to compile, and I think you can benefit from it. Now, the other thing that I'm going to toss out there for those that are in the Ohio market is that if you're looking for Christmas gifts, hey, check out what we're doing at pepper-licious.com and see what gift packs may be coming up and available to you for your Christmas jamming and all that great hot pepper jam that we're doing. So, you know what? That helps us keep this program alive and going as well. So let's get on to the idea of local politics. And what has happened and what Samuel Adams was really afraid of, and the Anti-Federalists in particular, is that when we move to this idea of a consolidated government, which we've talked about in so many different ways, so many different things that have happened in relationship to the 17th Amendment, in relationship to how we're seeing that the Democrats are now the Communist Party, USA, all combined into this insanity, and that they are executing the Kozak plan very, very well, and knowing that in them doing that, we are in a fight for our republic like never before because of the evils that they are perpetrating on the people, not only in a immoral fashion, but also in all of their immoral legislative activities, as well as, using the Constitution against us, using the courts against us. This was something designed by the communists. They studied our Constitution and how to operate within our framework better than we have. So, as Khrushchev said, they will take us through, they will take us down without a shot being fired by virtue of the educational system, by virtue of the destruction of our religious system, by virtue of destruction of our morality, by virtue of the takeover of the media, and let's see, what else was it? Oh, yeah. By getting all of their evil people elected into office. Geez, that's exactly like the Kozak plan. And they get the help of the State Department all on top of that. Now, what we have in relationship to local politics is exactly the same thing, is that when we look at what's happening within the national level, that's where everybody gets caught up. So what you have is you have all of these demon operators that are operating then at the local and state level that never really get caught until someone goes out there and really starts paying attention. We don't even bait for them. We don't even throw the worm in the water. And if you throw the worm in the water, there's no hook on there to be able to catch the enemy. So you know what? They're just eating all the worms. They're just eating all the bait No, more than that, they're just eating all the dinner. So when we take and we look at what's happening with local taxation, what's happening with the ideas of property tax, what's happening with the continued destruction of education, sit there and all you do is shake your head and go, whoa, who's putting the brakes on this? So through a friend of ours, we were invited to a township meeting, Burton Township. There's this thing that happened back in 2018 where in our local school district, the Berkshire School District, and I don't know if this sounds like anything else that's happening out there where you live, but in our school district, they were able to really hammer through and get on the bandwagon to pass a $28 million construction bond levy that goes over 30 some years. So I'll be dead before the thing's ever paid off. But anybody that buys my house is going to be stuck with it. But the problem of it is that they are building this on property they do not own. They're building it on property that is owned by Kent State University. They are getting some money from the state of Ohio for doing that. Let's see, Kent State, as you know, is a bastion of communism, but nobody ever wants to talk about that and other immoralities. But the fact is that they're going to build this whole new campus and consolidate all of the different schools from kindergarten through high school on that campus. And in doing the construction of this, it was like Obamacare. So the real short order of this thing, it was like Obamacare. They did not put forth a real construction plan or budget or what it was going to take to actually build this thing before the vote. So the voters voted on this idea of, great, $28 million, we're going to take it and have this whole new campus and all of that. And on top of that, they are consolidating another school district in the northern portion of our county into that. And the impact isn't a lot of kids, maybe 100 and some, 200 kids, something like that. I don't know, 300. But, what you're going to have is a student body of 1,800, maybe, and it's declining. So here's the real criminal activity, in my mind, that's happening with the school district, is that to get the funding and to take and establish what they can go for in a bond, they usually use the population of the county and the birth rates and what the increase of kids is going to be and all of that. And in doing so, what they've done here in this county is they're using the birth rates of the Amish. Now, I know a lot of you out there have no clue what that means, but the Amish are a significant population in our county. To wit, they birth at home, but they have to, let people know that they've had birds, and not birds, but births. Let me do that. Births. There. It's got that lisp thing. It's the mustache, I know. Anyway, the point of it is that what they're doing and what the school district has done is to show that there's an increase in children that will participate in the school system, Berkshire school system. They are criminally, in my mind, I call it criminally, using the Amish birth rates to show that there's going to be an increase in the number of kids participating in the education in the school district, when in fact the birth rates and the number of kids and families are going down, but the aging is going up. And so we have this great disparity on people wanting to keep their homes when the number of kids keeps going down, 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 and the older get older going up. So they lied. Anyway, in addition to that kind of makes me a little bit upset. So you're talking about local politics. You see, but they passed this $28 million levy that's on the backs of the people, and they are not even counting the interest. And on top of that, one of the big things that we went to this Burton Village town meeting about is sewer and water hookup. You see, this campus of Kent State campus, where they're building this new building and everything, is outside the village of Burton. They're in the township of Burton, but the village of Burton is the ones that will supply water and sewer. And they want a hookup fee. Isn't that right? But the school district says, no, we're already using your services because we have a couple of schools in the village, and all we're doing is we're moving somewhere else, so we shouldn't have another hookup fee. And on top of that, yeah, we don't know what the burden is really going to be. I mean, you're already getting our sewer and our poo and everything else. You're getting our kitchen scraps and all of that that's going into your system and into your sewage treatment plant, and we're using the water, and it should be all awash, right? Okay, so you go out and go into your same town you're living in, go build a new house. You're selling your old house. You go build a new house. Aren't they going to hit you for a sewer and water hookup fee on that new house? Anyway, talk about the bully. What I got, 2 minutes? So I got Kath good. I'm thinking 2 minutes. She keeps saying 3.5. Good. Whew. Wow. Anyhow, so here it is. Now we're at this meeting, and finally on the agenda of the meeting is this whole story about this hookup, and the village is in consternation, and they're going through their discussions on, wait a minute, we initially said $800,000 for the hookup fee. We can reduce that some, but we really don't know what the impact is. What do we want to do? And look at this. The school district wanted that fee waived, 100% waived. And now it comes out that in the budget, this $28 million budget, they had zero. Look at this. If you're on YouTube, look at this. $0 in the budget for hooking up to a sewer system. What an assumption. What an arrogant ass assumption of the school district, and especially this Mr. Stoddard, who's the superintendent on all of this. If I was back in business and I saw this guy pull the things he did, and the fact that they did not fully budget for the things that are needed in there, I would have fired him. Yes, I would. He would have been down the road. But, hey, he's hired by a bunch of collusionary school district board members. So anyhow, so here's the other smoke and mirrors, and I only got 2 minutes left now. So there's this development group that bought some property that wants to take and develop an old age community, a village, with all the different types of levels of care and all of that type of stuff and everything like that. And the developers are committing $25,000 a year to help offset what the school district's going to need to take and make that hookup, because they want to hook up and they're going to do all these other things. But you want to know something real interesting? Those developers don't have any money. They're not even annexed into the village. They have nothing. They have no financing. They have a plan. How many sales do you have? One of the council people asked. Well, none, because we don't have anything. So total smoke and mirrors. So when the school district was confronted with this, they go, well, we don't have any money. So here it is. Here it is what happened. Finally, with all the questioning that happened, and to make it short here in the last 30 seconds, is that the superintendent of the school gets up, this big burly guy, he gets up and he stomps up to the front and hands over to the village attorney a letter from the attorney saying, you have X number of days to answer this or we're suing you. A bureaucratic bully has now threatened elected officials. And you want to know something? They found a way to capitulate. They gave in. Donald Trump's not giving in. Donald Trump is not giving in to the bullies in the State Department and the collusion between all of the deep state and everything that's going on within the federal bureaucracies. Come on back in the next segment. Sam Adams got even more for you. Catch you on the backside. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this third segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they got it right. Sam Adams absolutely got it right. That's why he's called the father of the American Revolution. But more importantly, what he got right is what it meant to be a solid, believing, Reformation-minded Christian, and how that applies in every aspect of life, especially in governance. So with all of you that are from Soaring Eagle Radio that are joining us back again, and this is a third segment. So the second segment was a fun segment, and I have to say you're going to have to go to the archives and either listen to the whole podcast or you're going to have to go to YouTube and watch the program there, because we talked a lot about local bureaucratic bullying over elected people, and used the example of what happened at the Burton Village meeting this past Tuesday night, and how the school district, the local school district that I live in Geauga County, how they bullied the village into submission. Because I thought that the village was really going to stand up, even though the village kind of wanted to work with the school district. But you know what? In the end of it all, when I watched all of that, they bullied the village by taking and throwing a letter from their attorney to the attorney on the desk, handed it to, well, almost flopped it there. I mean, it was a pretty aggressive move when if you were there. It was interesting. And the fact of the matter is that then we saw all the scrambling of all the people trying to figure out, oh, how do we accommodate this now? How do we make this work? And you know something? They found a way to make it work. But I got to tell you, it's not a way, in my opinion and observation, listening to the earlier portions of the discussion, it's not a way that's going to work for the citizens of the village of Burton, Ohio. I think in the end run, it may somehow work out if the smoke and mirrors guys get their deal done and can build their project. Maybe. One way or the other, though, the taxpayers in Burton Village are on the hook. Okay? They're on the hook. So, you know, I often say every day's a Monday and Murphy will always visit. Thank you, Jesus, that you're ultimately in control, because it's all I can do is pray for those folks there in Burton, because it was just amazing. And once again, if that guy was that superintendent of the school district, if I dealt with him in the public sector when I was an executive in the telecom days, he would be one of the people. If he was a vendor that came in and tried doing some of that shenanigans, which I had vendors try and pull on me, I threw him out of the building. I banned those people from coming back and even visiting us for 6 months. You know, this is what we see all the time. So in relationship to that, Sam Adams bullied in the right way. He bullied for liberty. He didn't bully to push a project and process and bureaucratic insanities upon the people. You have to see is that what's happening in a school district, the educational type of system, which I'm not going to get into, that this Mr. Stoddard is promoting, is stuff that I've seen down in Costa Rica and Venezuela. And quite frankly, it is designed for either socialist and to take and bring forward a bunch of minions that will go to work and will, you know, it doesn't bring out the idea, the truth, the perspectives that Sam Adams and our founders were looking for in education. You see, I believe in people getting trade and going to trade more than college because I think college is a farce. But wow, what they're doing is anyway. More, enough of that. Let's get on to why I think Sam Adams. What he did, and he is well known for the time right after the Boston Massacre. He led a group that went to see the governor. And what happened is that he demanded that the troops would be removed from the city. Sam Adams was the man to face the officers of the crown and humble them before the people. Now, this is in the Congregational Quarterly, and this is talking about Sam Adams as the last Puritan. So he humbled them before the crown. Royalty quailed. Democracy triumphed. And in this case, we can say democracy triumphed because it was the people that came in as a mob. You have to understand how that was used. And it was used in the old terminology, not the modern idea of democracy, but it was the people that came together in one mind, and they were all actually in a mob that went to the governor's office and palace there. So Adams returned to the meeting with the promise that the 2 regiments should be sent to Castle Island, and Old South rung with victorious shouts. If you recall that because of the unrest that was happening and because Sam Adams was taking such a strong stand with Otis and Hawley and several others, that the England and a call for was to bring in 2 regiments that actually occupied Boston. And that was part of what happened that, caused the Boston Massacre. So when Adams went in there, he actually, the governor and lieutenant governor, they were shaking in their boots because of the way that he embarrassed them, and he was able to take and bring truth to bear. Now, when you have the likes and the arrogance and the insanities of an Adam Schiff, who is so evil. He's more evil. At least these guys that were there in governance during that foundational period in New England, they had a sense of religious, godly understanding. They had some sense of that. Adam Schiff and the rest of the Democrats are communists. They hate God. They hate you. They hate me. They really hate our constitutional republic. So they don't give a rip. And when you have the Jim Jordans and the Nunes's taking and embarrassing them, they don't care. They do not care. They will continue down their path of evil because they are implementing the Kozak plan and trying to destroy America according to Khrushchev's predictions. Oh, well, this kind of brings it and paints it to this whole idea that Sam Adams did it, and he was zealous. He was able to do these things because he understood theology. Sam Adams prayed continuously that Boston would be the New England Sparta. He prayed continuously for this government to come out the way that it should as a federation of states. When you went to Sam Adams' house, you had a Bible study before you even talked about politics because you had to have that frame of reference. So when I look at the time at Cath, oh wow, I even got double the last time. I got 6 minutes. So when I look at this whole thing as I started, and I can't get into because it is such a theological mess on Calvinism 2.0, and all of the twists and nuances and different things that are out there. I was reading and studying about what's involved in that, from a neo-Puritanism, neo-this, neo-that, and, neo is like, really, what's new? What's different about it? I guess I have to stay solidly embedded into the Sam Adams implementation of that Calvinistic perspective, and with the fact and reality that God is sovereign. God is absolutely, unequivocally sovereign. A lot of people believe in that, but they only believe in part of that sovereignty. They don't believe that he's sovereign over local politics. They don't believe he's sovereign over the school district. They don't believe some of them don't even believe he's sovereign in their home. They don't believe he's sovereign necessarily over, oh, wait a minute, yeah, he is sovereign over all of that, and I don't have to do anything. Well, I think that if you pay attention to what Pastor Wilson has preached about the sins of omission, and I think that when you look at his artillery sermon, it kind of goes in alignment with what was preached in some of the election sermons during the foundation of our nation. And in those, all of the elected were reminded that it was their duty to acknowledge the God of sovereignty first and foremost, and that they were to rule, or they were to sit, or they were to govern according to his ideas and truths. Which means that has to be done in home, which means it needs to be done in business, which means it needs to be done in education. Oh, that's the extensibility of the gospel. How God is sovereign over everything, but we are not to sit on our laurels. We are not to be ones that do nothing because God is sovereign, so it's just going to happen according to his sovereignty. Well, guess what? We're supposed to participate in his sovereignty. So I think a lot of people got their, eschatology, end times, theology all messed up, as well as what does it mean to implement the grace. I came to a conclusion because Kath was looking over to where I kind of do my morning reading and everything like that. And she goes, "You're reading Leviticus?" I said, "You're studying that?" I'm going, yeah, I know, it's a bite. I appreciate her question because most of the time people just kind of zip through it. And I understand why modern preachers don't touch on Leviticus now that I'm looking at this whole thing with this Calvinism 2.0. You know what? It's not about all the sacrificial stuff. It's about how to be holy before the living God, how to understand his sovereignty, how to really see his power, and how to know that he expects good governance. When he talks about all of his laws and how you do this and how you do that and what you should do and what you shouldn't do and all of the other things that come even from the perspective of the Ten Commandments, it has everything to do how you interact with culture, how you interact politically, how you take and establish a government from your home, from your personal life, all the way through your societal being that is pleasing to God. Geez, Sam Adams understood that. He wrote about it. He embedded that into different aspects of his writings, and he lived it out, as well as many of the other anti-federalists lived that out in their lives, saying that the only way to have real liberty, to have true liberty, is to understand what liberty means from the biblical point of view. What does that mean in relationship to a relationship with Christ? So I've been going pretty fast, covered a lot of territory. You have to go to the references, and the references are found at samueladamsreturns.net. I guess you're supposed to take and do some of the things I never do, is like promote yourself on YouTube, promote yourself on all these other things. But go to references, go check it out, samueladamsreturns.net, and be involved. Get your feet on the street. Stand up for what's right. Get involved locally. You have to go out there and stand your ground to ensure that these people are properly accountable, because most of the time they're not. If you're not there, then they're going to do whatever they well please, as we see even at the federal level. So you got to give a big hand to President Trump because he is standing our ground as we, the people. Who's going to stand your ground in your community? Who's going to go to the school board meetings and all those other different entity meetings? If it's not you, they're going to do what they want and raise your taxes. So come on back next week when Samuel Adams returns and those anti-federalists, they got it right.